I've just uploaded the SIS AWS Foundation benchmark to OpenRag, and now I'm going to ask Hermes to use that benchmark, bearing in mind it's never done this before. It's never, one, read this file before, and two, it's certainly never done an AWS assessment. Let's see how it goes. And just like that, this entirely local AI that's never seen this SIS benchmark before, it's never done an AWS review before, has just been able to complete it. And that's just a party trick, really. I'm going to be using Hermes, local AI, and OpenRag all week to find out whether or not it's actually useful. Quick honesty up front, this is an experiment, not a sales pitch. I don't actually know if this is going to work. Here's the setup. I already run my own local AI agent called Hermes. You may have heard of it, but that all runs on my kit using my GPUs for inference. It already has a little bit of memory of its own, and it even learns skills as it goes. It's really quite cool. The only issue is it's quite small. I mean, the memory, it'll only remember the last few things that it's done if it's not able to convert them to a skill. It doesn't know anything about my methodologies, it's never read my own reports, and it's never even seen a CIS benchmark. So the experiment's pretty simple, really. What if I was able to give Hermes a full searchable memory of everything I already know, entirely privately, and then use it for a week? Does it become like a superpowered teammate, or does it just remain a bit of a party trick? First, what does Hermes already give me? It does matter for the experiment because we don't want to repeat any functionality that we've already got. So two things. The first is that it does have a little bit of persistent memory. It is quite small, but it will remember things between sessions, and if I say, "Hi, my name's Dale," it will try and remember that from session to session. Two, skills, and this is where Hermes is super cool. Once it's done something once, it'll then retroactively work and build a skill so that it's able to do that again in the future. So let's just talk about that memory for a second. It's quite small in general, and the whole idea of it is it's a bit of working memory for tasks that you're actively working on. So if you keep going back to a code base, it's going to remember certain bits about it, and it just makes the agent a bit more useful between sessions. Equally, the learn skills are fantastic, but they do require the bot to have done the task once by itself, and then it's able to retroactively make that skill. So where am I drawing the line? What new functionality am I trying to add here? Essentially, I want to make a massive document library of everything I know, but also anything that I might want the AI to learn in the future, such as a CIS benchmark file, such as a new methodology, and then have it immediately able to take action on it. There's a few ways that we can do that. We can constantly increase the context, buy more and more GPUs, and just let it never forget anything that it's working on. Think about buying a bigger and bigger desk, but it inevitably fills up with paperwork. There is actually dedicated memory backends that work somewhat similar to what we're actually building here today, but it's not identical. The one I'm actually going to be adding today is called RAG, or Retrieval Augmented Generation. So let me actually explain what RAG is, because the acronym's sort of awful, but it's actually a really simple concept. Retrieval Augmented Generation. Forget what the words mean. Picture a brilliant researcher with a photographic memory, but they've not actually seen any of your files yet. RAG essentially gives that researcher their very own ginormous filing cabinet with a librarian who can sprint around at the speed of light. When you ask a question, that librarian sprints off, pulls the three most relevant articles, and then comes back before the researcher even has to answer your question. So this isn't training the AI on my data. The AI model itself doesn't change. My notes just sit in a searchable index, and every time I'm interacting with Hermes, it's able to go back through this filing cabinet of my notes and pull back whatever it needs. And this is why I think it's actually really useful for pen testing. We can go off and grab new documentation about things we've never touched before. And then the AI agent is able to immediately take action on it. And it never goes off to anyone else's cloud server, it's never used to train anyone else's model, it all stays local to my kit. Right, so let's wire my library into Hermes. I'm going to go pretty quick here, but if you want a full video of how to set all of this up, just ask and I'll make it. Clearly this isn't my live system, but all of my notes, I like to use Obsidian, they all live in here. I've created a little vault watcher here, so every time I make a change to any of these files, so if I make a new notes called "Hi YouTube," this is a new note for YouTube. You can see here that it's ingested the file, and if I go and have a look at OpenRag and go to the Knowledge tab, you can see that that Hi YouTube file has already been ingested. OpenRag runs in the background, and the reason why I've gone for OpenRag is it's a full standalone open source project that's able to actually ingest PDFs, markdown files, HTML, loads of different file types. At the moment, I'm just rocking markdown and PDF. And then the main trick is that Hermes has an MCP connection directly into OpenRag. So when I'm interacting with Hermes, it's able to go off to OpenRag and read any of these files and pull back any information that it might need. So for example, if we ask Hermes to check OpenRag for how to all the things, it's then going to go off, make a query to OpenRag, and should hopefully be able to retrieve the contents of that file. And as you can see there, Hermes isn't very impressed with the contents of the file, but it was able to find it. Equally, it doesn't have to be just markdown files in here. If I go to my desktop, I've got this sys benchmark file, and if I drop that into there, you'll see shortly that it'll be picked up and start loading into OpenRag. And as you can see there, it's now picked it up, it's processing. It'll take a while because it's a larger file, but once it's complete, Hermes then knows everything about CIS M365 foundations. So let's actually stress test this now. I've uploaded into my Obsidian Vault here the CIS benchmark for AWS. I think this is probably copyrighted, so I won't flick through this, but yes, what I'm going to do is actually head over to Hermes, and it's not learned to actually go and use OpenRag every time just yet. So in the prompt, I'm just saying, using the AWS CIS benchmark in OpenRag and the AWS profile Hermes auditor, please perform an audit of the AWS tenant. So behind the scenes, I've gone off and created a vulnerable AWS tenant. Nothing too crazy, just used a bit of Terraform. So let's actually see what Hermes makes of this. So this is actually going to do a couple of things. I've never run this before, so it doesn't have a skill to do this. So Hermes is going to take on the role of building the skill about how to interact with an AWS tenant, and hopefully it'll use OpenRag to go and read the CIS benchmarks and then make a bit of a loop there. So let's start this and let's see how it does. Cool, so we can see here that it's gone off to OpenRag, it's pulled up the AWS CIS benchmarks, and it's actually now using my terminal, and it's using the AWS CLI and that Hermes auditor profile that I mentioned. And it should now start working through all of the commands. And it's gathering all the data for the CIS audit, so it's actually using that file we've uploaded to actually run the audit, which is pretty cool. So while that's still running, you can actually do something really cool in Hermes. You can queue up commands to run after this. So I'm actually going to complete the loop here and go, once you've finished the audit, please place markdown port in my Obsidian Vault. And then once the audit's complete, it'll simply put that file back into my vault. It'll be then re-ingested into OpenRag so I can remember about it forever with Hermes. And just like that, it's finished writing the report. It's now going to dump that into my Obsidian Vault, so we should see that appear in just a second. I've actually seen it appear in OpenRag before we have actually seen it appear in the vault itself. So we actually take a look at that report now in Obsidian. It's nothing too detailed, but these should all line up with what we've already seen via the file in OpenRag. So it's built and it all works in a demo, but everything works in a demo. Demos are easy. So the real question is, am I actually going to continue to use this? Is it going to actually be useful in my day-to-day work? So here's the deal. I'm actually now going to use this for a week on my actual work, and I'm going to come back and tell you the truth. Even if that truth is, it was really fun to set up, but it's not actually very useful, I'll come back and tell you that.
1 week later.
It's been about a week now of me using this Hermes OpenRag hybrid, and it's been quite a mixed bag about the things that it finds really difficult to do and the things that it's really excelled at. And the first one may seem really basic, but it's been an absolute lifesaver for me, and it's been meeting notes. And by meeting notes, I mean it takes transcriptions from Teams does the transcribing, I chuck them into OpenRag, and then I'm able to ask Hermes to either analyze the entire meeting and pull out any to-dos from it, or actually if someone's then talking in the future about a different meeting, I can just ask it to pull up the details about that meeting, or ask, what this person said in this particular meeting, and it's able to go back into OpenRag and pull that information for me. And that's been such a massive time saving, because we all know how difficult it is to pay attention in meetings whilst taking notes, while keeping track of any to-dos that might come up, any actions that might come up. And actually being able to rely on those transcripts and knowing that Hermes is going to pick up the legwork of coming up with all the to-dos and actions off the back of it means you can actually participate a lot more in those meetings. I appreciate meetings aren't the most interesting things, but some other ways in which it's excelled is anything with a single interface. And by single interface, I mean things like the AWS CLI or AZ or the Google Cloud Command Line. Anything where Hermes can have a single sort of command line or single interface into whatever you're looking at, it really excelled at. As you sort of saw at the start of this video, I did that demo using AWS and the CIS benchmarks, and it really excelled at that. And this was a bit of a recurring theme throughout the week. I used Hermes many times to actually go and double check my working. As much as we're not trusting Hermes just yet to go and run these engagements by itself, I actually was able to use it to go and double check all of my work, and actually it really did very well. And then probably the final massive time saving that it made for me was actually during report writing. And this is something where it actually started off quite poor at the start of the week, but it got better and better because it had this memory of everything that it'd done in the past. So the first time I asked Hermes to generate some finding descriptions, they're quite simplistic and probably at too high of a technical level for how I like to write in my customer facing reports. So this actually ended up showing up probably one of the best use cases as the OpenRag setup here, and it's that I could put actual pen test reports into OpenRag. Hermes is then able to read them and then able to actually improve and iterate on those findings. And actually by the end of the week, it was producing findings that I could just copy and paste straight into reports, and no one knew that they were completely AI generated. Okay, so how did it struggle? And I'd say this could be a limitation of the local model. There's obviously a limit of the sort of power of model that I can run locally on hardware. We're not wanting to send any of this off to Claude, and actually any tooling which was sort of multi-dimensional. And by multi-dimensional, take like a web app test. You've got Burp that you're interacting with a browser, you might be using Nikto, you might be using all these different tools. And this is something where I actually found it really started to struggle, particularly with things like the Burp Suite MCP. Burp Suite does have an MCP that is supposed to make it really easy for AI agents to interact with it, but Hermes just really seems to struggle. It'll eventually get there, but it'll waste so many hours trying to interact with Burp that it ended up being so much better and quicker for it to just generate Python code that proxied through Burp, and that's how it did all its testing. So I guess we come on to the most important question, which is this setup worth it? And I suppose if you don't already have the hardware, definitely not. There's a lot of investment here, thousands of pounds to buy GPUs in order to run the local model, before you even start talking about Hermes and OpenRag, which are free, but on top of all that investment in hardware. Dale from the future here. I just wanted to add in, what I was essentially saying that is for an individual, it's really hard to justify that cost. However, I've continued to use this. We're actually, the time frames have been skewed a little bit. And the more I use it, the more I'm actually like, you know what, I think this sort of becomes essential if you're a company running this sort of stuff. Again, I'd struggle to ever say that, an individual could ever, I could never justify an individual investing in this. But actually, if you're a pen testing firm and you had like a centralized server, like an inference server, well, actually it suddenly makes a lot of sense. However, if you've already got the hardware and you're already sort of experimenting with AI, then I'd actually say it's very much worth it. It can really change the game, and particularly with things like report writing, it has genuinely sped up my workflow, and it's something that I'm really going to struggle going back to manually writing reports now. So that's going to be the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Remember to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.